Welcome to another podcast with Chris Fore. This is the Coach's Locker Room Podcast. And I enjoy you taking some time out of your busy day to listen to this podcast. Some of you aren't going to want to hear anything because this is about 49 mistakes coaches make on their resumes. Some of you know that you'll never need a resume. You're about to be retired, or the job you have you'll be at forever. But I know a whole lot of you out there will need a resume at some point. So, although I make a living, a side hustle, helping coaches create resumes at my website, 8laces.org, no other athletic director or coach that I know of is a resume expert. And so you can check that information out at 8laces.org to see how I make resumes and the process we use, etc. But anyhow, that we're going to get to 49 mistakes coaches make on their resumes right after our intro. You are listening to the Coach's Locker Podcast with Chris Fore, a place for all coaches to call home. The Coach's Locker Podcast is a part of the Football Coaching Podcast Network. Please visit footballcoachingpodcast.com to hear and see our entire lineup of top football coaches coming to you every single podcast with valuable information to help you and your program. The Coach's Locker Podcast with Chris Fore exists to help prepare coaches to be hired for the job of their dreams and to provide coaches with dynamite resources to become even more successful in their field. You can reach me on Twitter at Coach Fore. That's at COACHFORE. And my podcast home is at 8laces.org/podcast. That's 8laces, EIGHTLACES.org/podcast. Welcome to the Coach's Locker Podcast with Chris Fore. Now, let's get after it. So, 49 mistakes coaches make on their resumes. I have been an athletic director for 6 years. When I initially wrote this article about these mistakes, I don't know, that was a few years ago. I've hired about 25 to 30 head coaches as an AD. I'm in a position now as an assistant principal in charge of athletics, ASB, and discipline, where I'm hiring coaches as well. But again, I wrote this article, I believe 2 years ago, just to help coaches. And I've also got this on CoachTube. I've got a longer, it's 90 minutes. It's about an hour and a half long video series on there. I think that one's called 29 Mistakes Coaches Make on Their Resumes. Again, that's a video series. A lot of the same product that you'll hear about today, same information. However, it is extended on there. I'm not going to be able to go over all 49 of these. I hope to have you here for about 40 minutes or so. So I just can't cover enough. So if you are interested in this topic, want to learn more about creating a great resume, check out that CoachTube. Again, that's CoachTube.com if you've never been there. And just search for me, and you'll see I've got several different options on there for coaches in regards to their resumes and portfolios and cover letters, etc. So the number one mistake coaches make on their resumes is failing to sell themselves. I was hired this offseason, in fact, about 2 weeks ago here. I was hired by a state champion coach to put together his resume. He's looking at maybe some opportunities. And nowhere on there did it even have him. I never said he was a state champion. Like, dude, that needs to be blaring from the top, the rooftops. Listen, a lot of people don't like to brag about themselves. If you've heard me before talk about creating a resume, your resume is the place to brag about yourself. So the number one mistake guys make is failing to sell themselves. Number two, they simply list their job duties, the same ones every coach in America has. I don't need to hear that you're responsible for helping with huddle, or that you coached wide receivers on wide receiver technique. Obviously, you're a wide receiver coach. Your job is to help them on wide receiver technique. I'll see bullet points for wide receiver coaches sometimes that says, coach route running on a daily basis. I hope so. You're the stinking wide receiver coach. Okay, come on, man. See an offensive coordinator resume, and their first bullet point is responsible for coordinating the offense. Tell me something I didn't know, okay? So that's the number 2 mistake coaches make on their resumes, is they just list their job titles and their job duties. If I'm reading a resume, I know what the job duties are of a coach usually, okay? Number 3, you haven't told me enough about the experiences you've had and how those will help our program, my program. So the experiences you've had in the past, right, no matter what that was. You were a girls basketball coach. For 12 years, you progressed from, freshman assistant to varsity head coach. Well, how has that experience as a girls basketball coach, how has that helped you to apply for my job now? So you need to figure out what experiences in my past are going to help this current job I'm looking at. So that's another big mistake made on resumes right there, is that you're not telling me enough about your experience and how that matches up to the experience I'm trying to hire for right now. Number 4, folks, the objective is useless. Again, the objective. Okay, that's a mistake on a resume. You know why it's a mistake? It takes time. The objective is an old school. When you went out to a trade show, and you're going to hear me use this spiel a few times this morning, afternoon, night, whenever you're listening. When you went out to a trade show with your resume, you're a shoe salesman. You're trying to get another shoe salesman job at the local shoe salesman conference, and you went to pass out resumes, okay, you would put an objective up there. Or maybe you were posting them up somewhere on a bulletin board, a real bulletin board. You might put an objective up there. These days, folks, you're applying to jobs that they know exactly why you're applying, because 95% of jobs you're applying to nowadays are all done electronically. You don't need an objective on your resume anymore. They know why you're looking for it. So I consider that a mistake. It's wasted time and space. Next, mistake number 5. Okay, mistake number 5. And now your objective, you spent so much time trying to craft just the right way, it's not what I'm looking for. So now think about that. You wrote an objective. You don't really need to write an objective, but the way you wrote it has now turned me off. It's turned me off to your job, okay? I'm sorry, to reading your resume. Number 6, misspelled words. That is a really big problem on resumes. Folks, you cannot have a misspelled word on your resume. Totally unacceptable to have a misspelled word on your resume, okay? So make sure you don't have them. Use spell check, check your spelling, use your spell checker, because there's no reason at all you should have a misspelled word on your resume. It makes you look uneducated, unprepared, etc. Okay, so make sure you don't have them. Number 7, you make some outlandish claims without supporting them. How about this? Here's an outlandish claim. Made a drastic culture change. Well, what does that mean? Quantify that. Qualify that. Okay? I hate seeing improved the program. Again, what does that mean, you improved the program? I don't know anything about the program. You got to spell it out to me. So that's number 7, making outlandish claims. Number 8, you list players who went on to college. Like you created that kid in a laboratory and destined them for college. Is that what you did? I always think it's interesting seeing on resumes a list of college players you coached. Okay, and I did this before because I copied it from somebody. Here's the deal. First kid I ever coached back in the 90s who went to play college football. Okay, Eric Thomas. Eric Thomas was 6'2", 240 pounds as a freshman. Eric Thomas went to Brown University, an Ivy League school, out of Fallbrook High School. He's a linebacker. Eric Thomas would have gone to Brown University or to a Division I school with or without Chris Fore coaching him his freshman year. Okay? So stop putting on all these kids and thinking it makes you look like some tremendous coach or something like that. Because it doesn't necessarily make you out to be a great coach if the guy reading your resume knows what he's looking for. So I hope that makes sense, okay? I had a guy one time call me from New York. I was looking for a basketball coach. And he says, hey, if I just told you all the guys who I've coached into the NBA, if I gave you that list, do I need to send you a resume? And I said, absolutely. Because whoever you put in that resume, whoever you put in the NBA, I don't know that you really had an influence on them going in the NBA. He said, what do you mean? I said, Coach, those kids probably would have gone in the NBA without you. Okay, no offense, but they're probably 6'7" without you. The kid was probably 6'8" without you. Okay, thank the gene lottery, the gene pool lottery. Not your coaching. Well, he hung up. He didn't like my answer. But that's the God, the honest truth answer. Okay? That's the God, the honest truth answer. So, real important there that you be careful, be selective on that aspect, okay? Of what you put, who you put on to your resume. I really don't think, sure, that might look good to some folks. I get why you would put it on. But just be a little weary of that. Number 9, here's a phrase. Created the most competitive football program in the region. Okay, again, that kind of goes with an outlandish claim. When you make claims on your resume, you should prove them. You should kind of figure out a way, and I know how to do this. I'm not giving away all my secrets now. Come on, I got to make a living too on the side. But you should figure out a way, you need to figure out a way, and this is my specialty on making resumes, on how to support that claim, okay? How to support that claim. Number 10, saying that you can coach any position on the field, but your resume doesn't show that. It doesn't show you've done it. So when you make a statement like that on your resume, I can coach any position on the field. Some guys put that like up at the top, as characteristics or something like that. Okay, but then when I read your resume and you never coached linebackers or you never coached DBs, then I start to question things. What do you mean he can coach any position on the field? Maybe he can just coach it, but does he have experience coaching it? Right? So, I don't know. Kind of looks weird when guys make a statement like that. Okay? Number 11, when you write paragraphs on your resume. Folks, this is a real big one. This is a real big issue. In fact, as I told you earlier, right now, my school is conducting a search for a new head football coach. And so I've been getting resumes in for this job. When I say right now, this is February 2019. And when there's so much text on a resume, I don't want to read it. I don't want to spend time reading paragraphs on your resume. But I can't tell you how many coaches do this. Okay? A resume should be quick, bullet points. They say the average, like in the business world, the average resume reader, you got 45 seconds to get that resume reader to read your resume. 45 seconds, that's it. A lot of coaches, they make the mistake. They'll put part of their stinking cover letter on their resume. And that's a real mistake, folks. Okay? I don't want to read, half a page objective. I don't want to read a half a page synopsis on your resume. That stuff needs to be kept to your cover letter. Number 12, repeating a bullet point. Number 13, repeating a bullet point. See what I did there? That's called a lack of attention to detail. When guys simply, create a resume and they repeat bullet points, it tells me they're not paying real close attention to the resume. They're not proofreading the resume. Kind of makes me question how organized they are. Number 14, when you write nationally ranked defense without showing what you are ranked. I've seen that on a resume before. They said, was responsible for creating a nationally ranked defense. Again, prove it. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Prove that statement to me. Was responsible for creating the number 4 ranked defense in the nation according to Max Preps. Or whatever it is, okay? Again, prove it. You'll hear me say that a lot here with your resume. Number 14, 15, you put your record every year. Now, this is a big one, folks. Listen. I was a head coach for 8 years, so what is that? 80 games plus playoffs. We made playoffs in 6 of those 8 years. Went to the playoffs, I think, in 6 of those 8 years. So, I don't know, 10 times 8, 80. I'd probably have been a head coach for 90, 92 games, something like that. I don't know, 60% win, maybe. Okay, if I put my overall record on a resume at something like 60%, that's not very good, folks. I'm going to be honest with you. And I see coaches putting records on resumes that are like 40% wins. Why? Why would you advertise you did not even win half your games? Now look, I've had an 0-10 season. If you coach 17 years, you probably will have one of those along the way. I'm just saying, you're going to have bad seasons. You can explain through some bad seasons. Especially if I spent a lot of my career at smaller schools. 200 kids, 400 kids. It wasn't until about the last 5 years here, I've entered into some larger schools. But if you have on your resume, I see coach lists like their year-by-year results, right? Think about their year-by-year results on their resume where it says like 3-5, 2-6, 10-2, 7-3, 3-7, 4-8. Okay, what happens on those losing seasons? Do you think people look more at your winning seasons or your losing seasons? Because I can guarantee you, I've been in the room with the panel looking at resumes, and I guarantee you if they see 10-2, 11-1, 9-3, 2-8, 3-7, their eyes and their questions go to, I wonder why he went 2-8. Why did this coach have, look, he had all this success, but then 2-8, 3-7? What's going on with this guy? It's just kind of human nature. Okay? They don't look to 10-3, 11-1. Man, how did he win 11 games? No, it's going to be, how did he lose 6? Why did he lose 6? So I'm just being very honest with you. That's the truth. When people are reading those resumes, I tell guys all the time, unless you've won like 80% of your games, I'm not kidding. Unless you have a high win percentage, okay, I would not ever put your records on your resume. Because like I said, the natural tendency is going to look at those bad years, and those will stick out. So don't put those on there. I'm not kidding. I got a resume a couple days ago. This was a coach who wanted me just to review his resume. He had at the top one of his bullet points, summary of qualifications. It said 47% win percentage. Thought to myself, if I'm an AD and I get a document that says 47% winning percentage, the first thing I'm going to do is pass that to my no pile. I don't want a guy who's won 47% of his games. Why would I want to hire a guy who's won 47% of his games? All right, so I hope I made that clear. I think that's a huge mistake, okay, that coaches put on their resumes. Okay, another one coaches do a lot, all the time. Just had one yesterday from a very, very good coach who said on there, he listed all like 6 years and how many yards his quarterback threw for every year. 3,473 passing yards. Next bullet point, 2,855 passing yards. Next bullet point. 3,600 passing yards. Well, I'm a football coach. I know 3,600 passing yards. That's a heck of a year. That's a heck of a lot of yards. Okay? But so is 1,800 for the right program. Right? You know what I mean? So when coaches put stats on a resume, it really means almost absolutely nothing if those stats are used in a vacuum. Okay? So let me talk for a second about what that means. It's a real key to building great resumes. I had a coach years ago, and I've talked about this on a podcast before, I believe. He turned a program from 0-60 to 5-5. That was nowhere on his resume. If you were to put on that resume, went 5-5 in my first year at wherever school was, I'll use my alma mater. Went 5-5 in my first year at Fallbrook High School. That doesn't mean anything. Went 5-5, it almost means, wow, you're a 50% coach. But if you quantify that, inherited a program who was 0-60, went 5-5 in my first year, oh, now you see what I've just done there, folks. I have quantified and qualified that bullet point. 5-5 now looks tremendous. Now let me ask you this. You're a principal. You're an athletic director. You're a booster club parent. You're a teacher on a resume committee. You see on that resume, the first bullet point, I inherited a program that was 0-60, comma, we went 5-5 in my first year. You know what I do as an AD? I set that resume into my yes pile, because when I'm reviewing resumes, I have 3 piles, yes, no, and maybe. I'm putting that resume in the yes pile right now, ahora. Because that, my friends, is an impressive, stinking coaching job. I don't know any ins and outs of that guy and how he won 5 games after they couldn't win 1 in 6 years. I don't know any details, but it makes me want to know details. That makes me want to know details. That makes me want to go, wow, I need to interview this guy. Okay? But if you have, just stats in a vacuum, it doesn't mean anything to anybody unless they really, really know football. But even then, I spent a long time running the wing tee. We'd run for 4,000 yards in a year, 3,000 yards in a year. Okay? Have maybe 2 backs hit 1,000 yards each. We might only throw for 1,000 yards. If we threw for 1,000 yards on the year, that's tremendous. But what does me putting that on a resume even mean? That means nothing to the reader who doesn't know anything about it. Number 17, as an O-line coach, I help develop and install different run and pass techniques in the spread no-huddle offense. That's a bullet point I've read before. Big deal. Just about every offensive line coach in America can write this bullet point. Who cares, fella? Who cares, fella? That's a lame bullet point that's going to get you nowhere. That's a mistake using lame bullet points. Bullet points that don't mean anything, okay? Because, listen, if any coach in America can write your bullet point, don't write it. I just thought about that. That sounds real good. That's pretty clever, I think. If any coach in America could write this bullet point I'm about to write, don't write it. Forget about it. Move on. Think of something else. Okay? Number 18. I aided in developing game plans, scouting, and other on-field duties. Again, see above. Every coach in America can do that, folks. You need to be original on your resumes. You need to be original. That's not original. That's boring. That's lame. That's sickening. Makes me go, gross. I aided in developing game plans, scouting, and other on-field duties. Again, I took that right from a resume. Took that right from a real resume. That's a lame bullet point. Number 19. A mistake on your resume is if that resume reads slow. A mistake a lot of coaches make is having a resume that reads slow. What do I mean by reading slow? I mean that it just takes forever to get through it because the formatting is awful. Folks, formatting your resume is one of the absolute keys to it being read, to it being seen, to it being evaluated. The format. If your resume reads slow, one way a resume reads slow, for instance, is if you've been at a place for 2 years and you got 15, 16 bullet points for 2 years. And then you go to a place for 4 years and you got 15 bullet points. Okay? Well, I get this question a lot. How many bullet points should I have? There's no right or wrong answer, but I would say 2 at the most per year. Now, if you've been someplace at 1 year, you don't want just 2. You want maybe 4 or 5. If you've been out of place 20 years, if you want about 2 bullet points a year, are you going to come up with 40 bullet points for that job? No. Okay, so it really depends on how long you've been there. But I'd say if you've been somewhere for 4 years, 6, 7, 8 bullet points, that's max. But your resume will read slow if you get too many more bullet points than that in there. Okay, another mistake, number 20, mistake coaches make on a resume. It's ugly. You ugly. Your mama dressed you funny. Okay, number 20, the resume is ugly. It doesn't appeal to my visual stimulation. Okay, here's the deal. If it doesn't appeal to my visual stimulation, I'm not going to read it. If your resume is ugly, I am not going to want to read it. So, folks, make sure you design a good-looking resume. Okay? It's got to catch the attention of the reader. Because if it's not, if there's not much home to write home about on how it looks, why do I want to read it? So you got to encourage a resume reader to read your resume. You've got to encourage your resume reader to read that resume. And part of how you do that, folks, is the design of it. Don't design an ugly resume. Don't design an ugly resume. Number 21, the resume is 6 pages long. And you only coached for 4 years. So a little bit of an exaggeration there, right? 6-page resume, 4 years. You might think that's a little bit of exaggeration. Folks, that's a real deal. That happened. That's a real deal. I've seen one of those. 6-page resume for 4 years. Don't make that mistake. I repeat, don't make that mistake, okay? Not very smart to go that route. Number 22, the resume is 1 page long, and you've coached for 30 years. The resume is 1 page long, and you coached for 30 years. Again, that's a mistake. You're not telling the reader enough about you. You're not telling the resume panel enough about you. Okay, that 6-page one for 4 years, telling me way too much. The 1 page long one for 30 years, telling me not enough. So there's a balance on how long that resume should be. Okay? There's an old idea out there. There's an old idea out there that a resume, should be no longer than 1 page. And that's an old idea. Okay? That idea of a 1-page resume kind of comes from back when, again, you were at a trade show and you don't want anything longer. You don't want anything longer to be handed out. So they would tell you, keep your resume to 1 page. Okay? Keep your resume to 1 page because you would go and print these things out. Okay? And that is something you wanted to stay at. Nowadays, it's much different. Okay? Nowadays, the reason that resume process is different is because you have the ability to turn in so many resumes electronically, okay? And that electronic resume gets sent a lot of times as a PDF, okay? And it is attached to, in California we use something called EdJoin. an adjoint is a process by which you submit all your documents. Okay? Well, if your resume is 2 pages or even 3, I suggest trying to stay at 2. But, if it's just 3 pages long, okay, that resume, it's not a big deal because it's electronic. You're not passing these things out, So that whole idea of a 1-page resume is kind of old school. And with now electronic formats we have and the emails where you send your resume, it's not that big of a deal if it's longer than that 1 page, okay? Number 23, you bold and capitalize the school you're at, but the position you held is more important to me. Okay, so to me, the athletic director reading that resume, I don't care the school you're at. Yes, it matters. I've done a past podcast on 6 things an athletic director looks for. Yeah, one of those is the quality of school you're at. But more important to me is your title. So your title is more important to me than the school you're at. So make sure as you write your resume, as you redo your resume, your title, offensive line coach, head football coach, special teams coordinator. You want to draw attention to your title on your resume, not as much as the school. Number 4, this just makes me infuriated sometimes. When you put on there, guys put like summary of qualifications, right, at the top of their resume, which I advise against because that just makes things boring. Because most of the time that summary of qualifications, unless you're a tremendous writer and you've created 4 or 5 that are just mind capturing, most of them are very lame that I see. For instance, proficient in email and Microsoft Office. Folks, this is 2019. If you're not proficient in email and Microsoft Office usage, then you got some problems. I don't need to know. You don't need to put that. I'm taking an educated guess that every person in the world nowadays who sends me an email with their resume or fills out our job application with the resume, I'm taking an educated guess that stuff's that's knowledge. It's common knowledge. I'm guessing you know how to use I'm guessing you know how to use email if you're a teacher and a coach. Don't need to put that. 25, areas of knowledge. This is a thing I just referred to. Coaches put these things at the top of their resumes. Areas of knowledge, or they'll put like summary of qualifications. And they list every facet of the sport you coach. Like, I have the ability to watch film. I know and manage the huddle system. They list like all 55 assets of the game. I can teach on the whiteboard. I can fit equipment. I can edit film. I can analyze film. They list this summary of qualifications that, again, they're just listing the job duties of a coach. I know you can do those things. You don't need to regurgitate them on an area of knowledge or summary of qualifications. Use those areas of your resume to actually write stuff that matters, okay? Number 26. Again, this is kind of a section that's totally unneeded on your resume, in my opinion. It's called the profile section. They tell me I've been married for 12 years, have 3 kids named Joey, Joseph, and Josephine, age 13, 11, and 2. You tell me on there you like to play the guitar while fishing. Go on to tell me who your influences were, what are your favorite books, who's your favorite professor, the reason you're a coach, how you don't care about money, you're going to work as many hours as you need to run the program. That profile section I'm referring to, some of you coaches know what I mean here. Okay? Eliminate it. Eliminate it. I don't need to know everything about your personal life. I'm hiring a teacher and a coach. Sure, some of those things are nice to know maybe, but they could also, folks, I'll be honest with you. I've read some of those profiles in the past when I've hired a coach. As I've said, I've hired about 25 head coaches during 6 years of being an AD. And as I've read some of those sections on resumes, sometimes it turns me off for me to read, oh, this guy has 8 kids and 3 dogs and 2 horses. I'm thinking, how does he have any time to coach, right? So be very, very careful with giving too much personal information. And again, it's just not needed on the resume. The resume is about your professional biographical sketch, okay? You don't need to put in there when your kids were born. And, again, you never know what biases some people around the table might have. And the more you tell about some of that personal stuff, what if you say you're a big country music fan, you go to 40 concerts a year? Someone on that resume, committee, that job committee, they can't stand country music. Well, boy, that just worked its way right itself against you now, boy. So, just be really careful with those profile sections. I've seen like a whole paragraph written on a profile where it's like maybe they just cut and pasted it from the football program or something. That's not needed for your resume, okay? Take this profile section off your resume. It simply does not belong. It does not belong here. Okay, another mistake. Mistake number 27 on your resume. Okay? Prepared and implemented all phases of the football program. I've seen that before. Prepared and implemented all phases of the football program. Really? You were an assistant coach for 2 years. You really did that? All the phases? Boy, if you really did this, you should have been the head coach. Kind of makes me think you're exaggerating. You prepared and implemented all phases. Fundraising, booster club, chain gang, filming, exchanging films, stats, washing uniforms, hanging uniforms, buying uniforms, sending in your helmets, unpacking your helmet. Really? All phases? You sure? Okay. Hey, if you did it, write it, but be careful. You don't want to get caught exaggerating and lying on your resume. 28, coordinated the defensive unit and assisted in coaching offense and special teams. Kind of makes me wonder a little bit when I read a statement like that. Is this a jack of all trades and a master of none? That also kind of scares me when I read a resume. When I read a resume that shows like this guy, linebackers coach, varsity offensive line coach, punt coach, kick return coach, PAT specialist. Now, I'll be honest with you. There was a time I was an offensive coordinator and a special teams coordinator, and I coached our running backs. It was not a good setup, me being a head coach and coaching an offensive coordinator, coaching a special teams coordinator. Not a good setup. I had a small staff. I didn't like doing all that, but I had to. Okay, so you might be in that boat. I mean, I coached 16 years of high school football. I coached every position on the field. Okay, but my specialty would be offensive line and running backs. Can I coach the quarterbacks in my system? Absolutely. Can I find someone better? Absolutely. Can I coach our defensive backs? Can I coach our secondary? Yes. Can I find somebody better? Absolutely. My friend Coach Kistner at Oak Hills. If I'm the smartest man in the room, I'm in the wrong room. Something along those lines. If I'm the smartest man in the room, I didn't hire very well. Okay? Something along those lines. So, be careful to show that you're a jack of all trades, because you're also kind of showing you might be a master of none. Okay, be careful there. Just a few more here. 29, ensured a positive, supportive, and up-tempo practice atmosphere. I've read that exact. Again, guys, these are all quotes I've cut and pasted over the years. Ensured a positive, supportive, and up-tempo practice atmosphere. I certainly hope you did that, Coach. Again, I'm trying to drive this point home, my friend, listening. Every coach in America will put that on their resume. this make me want to put your resume in the yes pile? Does this make me want to put your resume in the yes pile? The fact that you helped to run an up-tempo practice. Well, as Chris Fore once said, Lottie freaking da! Right? I used to have that soundbite on my computer. I love it. I can't remember. Is that from Tommy Boy? I don't remember. But back like when you could first put little sound clips on your computers in the 90s, I put that on there every time the computer made a mistake, I think is what it was. And that was funny. I used to make mistakes just to hear old Farley. But, folks, I don't care that you helped to run an up-tempo practice. 30, the teaching section and coaching section all separated and totally hard for me to understand, hard for me to follow your career, hard for me to figure it out. Again, this also goes with, like, when coaches put key accomplishments in one section, it'll say, like, Coach of the Year, won the Sportsmanship Award, but it doesn't tell me what school they did that with. Put all of your awards and accomplishments under each school. Put that in that section, please. Stop separating those things. It's kind of dumb, to be honest with you. Okay, so if it's all disjointed, I have a teaching section here, a coaching section here, an extracurricular section here. Lame. Don't do that. 31, you have just one bullet point under a place where you spent 5 years. That's all you can tell me? That's all. I've seen this. 5 years, one school, teacher, and a head coach. All he had was one bullet point. That means you can only tell me one thing about a place? 32, the coaching skills area on your resume is unnecessary. I'll read all of this under each position you've had. Again, they go that coaching skills, or they'll call it a summary of qualifications. I don't need to see that, okay? 33, number 33. You forgot to list what your teaching credential is in. I need to hire a teacher right now, right? Maybe I'm a principal, I'm an AD. I have a teaching position open. Let's say I've got 3 teaching positions open. History, English, and special ed. And I'm looking through resumes, and your resume looks great, but I don't know what you teach. There's no teaching certification listed on there. Okay? Hey, look, I got another 100 resumes to read. I'm going to just put yours in the maybe pile. Now, when I got 100 resumes on my desk. I split those into yes, no, maybe. Usually by the end of it, my yes pile is like 25 or 30. My maybe pile is now maybe 15, 20. Guess what I do with those maybes? Boop, those go to the no. Then I go through my 25 again, yes, no, and maybe. And I put those 25 back in the yes, no, and maybe piles. So, folks, if I need to see something on your resume and it ain't there, I'm just going to the next resume usually. I mean, unless I know who you are, I know of your reputation, like, oh, man, this guy's coming from such and such school, or he's from such and such tree of another coach. But if I got to search, I'm sorry, I'm going to just go on to the next one. 34, you must have a bachelor's degree for this position, but you don't have your education listed. I don't know if you have a bachelor's degree or not. I don't have the time to contact you and search this stuff out. Again, I just hit on that. Okay? I can't find it on your resume. I'm not going to spend a lot of time searching. I mean, again, if the resume is amazing and I'm missing this one little detail and I know something about you or where you're coming from, I might make a quick phone call, drop a quick email to you. But if I don't know who you are, you're Joe Blow, you come from Joe Blow school, and I don't know that you have a bachelor's degree, but you got to have one, I'm sorry, I'm not going to probably search things out. I'm just going to throw that resume in a no pile and move on. Folks, I hope you've learned a lot. Now listen, I know I didn't get through all 49. So listen, I'll tell you how to find that. If you go to 8laces.org, EIGHTLACES.org /podcast, okay, go there, you'll see my show notes. Well, you'll see a library of all my shows so far, and then you'll see the show notes. And on that show notes, okay, on that show notes is where you'll see a link to the article I wrote, 49 mistakes coaches make on their resumes. Also, check out CoachTube, CoachTube.com, search Chris Fore. I've got a 90-minute video series on this same stuff, okay, if you're real serious. One last thing. You might have been listening to this. Now, listen, I'm going to do a little sales pitch, so turn this off if you don't like it. But you got to listen to me for free for 40 minutes. Listen, I might have just overwhelmed you, and that's not my goal. But, folks, your resume is so important. Don't let what you read from a Division I coach saying, I've never read a resume in my life. If you're a high school coach, your resume means something. I had an NAIA coach reach out to me today. Chris, I need 3 GAs. Can you send me some resumes, please? Yes, sir. I'm right on it, coach. There are what are called resume searches. My school right now is doing a resume search. Okay? That means we're going to open up the floodgates and get as many resumes and applications as we can to hire a coach. Okay? You know, we don't have an assistant who wants a job, has expressed interest in the job. So, you know, a lot of times that's the route I like to go. But when there's a true paper search, a resume search, I'll tell you this, there's another school, right? Because a lot of guys think, I don't need a resume. There's another school right now in Southern California having a very difficult time finding a head coach. And guess what? Principal is working his tail off. And guess what? Chris, send me the resumes of some of your top guys in your network. So many coaches, especially at the high school level, are doing resume searches, believe it or not. So you better have a great one. And if you feel like this is overwhelming, if you feel like, I think I just listed 39 mistakes or something, 35 out of the 49 I have. If you feel like you're making a lot of those and your resume might not be very good, I suggest you pay me to write your resume. Be honest with you. You're not going to find another person in the country that I know of yet. If you know of somebody, please let me know. But my business has been writing resumes now for about 5 years, 6 years. Okay? This weekend I just finished one for an NCAA Division I men's basketball coach. He actually hired me last May. He's been a head coach at Division I level in the Big Ten, folks. But he found me online because he's currently an assistant, okay? But he wants to get into this next hiring cycle. So he Googled, you know, how to make a coach resume or whatever he did. He came to my website. He read some testimonials on there from some other college coaches, some guys who have played in the NFL, and said, man, this looks outstanding. So he came out and hired me to write his resume, and he hired me in May. We've been working on it since May, believe it or not, and I just wrapped that thing up. But my resume service costs $149, and that's a supply and demand thing. It's actually, when you look and study corporate resume writers, you know, they're making $250, $300 sometimes. So very affordable, especially if you're looking at getting your next dream job. I'm not really a salesman, to be honest with you. But if you're looking at a one-time, lifetime investment, because once I've written your resume, and then what I do also, I send you a 23-minute phone recording on how I make resumes great, and a system I've developed personally over years of doing this, okay? Once you've done that and you understand how I make resumes great, you'll never have to spend another penny making a resume your entire life. So $149 is a small price to pay to get that dream job that you're looking at. This weekend I got a text message, Twitter DM actually. He said, Coach, before I hired you last year, I was 0 for 3 in securing a job interview, a head coach interview. He said, this offseason, I'm 1 for 2, and last year I was 3 for 3. So he actually hired me in the fall of 2017. Okay? That spring of 18 hiring season, he sent his resume out to 3 places, got 3 interviews. He never got an interview before that over 3 with his old resume. Over 3 with his old resume. But for me, when I wrote it, because I'm going to brag here, I do a darn good job on these, and you'll see that if you go read the testimonials. Folks, I can't tell you how many people tell me every single week, Coach, thank you for the resume you wrote. I got 5 interviews this off season with it. Last year I had none, or last year I had 1. Okay? Got a guy here in Southern California who sent me something recently. He's got 4 job offers right now. And he gives me 100% credit. I don't take 100% credit for that. That coach has had a heck of a career. But he has now placed himself on paper as somebody who's very attractive. Okay, we've done that on paper. He didn't look very good on paper before, folks. But we've done that now. So anyway, 8laces.org, EIGHTLACES.org. Right now is the busiest time of year. The resumes are $149. They will drop in the cost in the off season. So basically you're looking at in about May they will lower. So and then, from May till September they stay at a little lower. I think I don't know if I'm going to go 129 or 119 right now. But supply and demand kind of drives the cost of my resume business. So a lot of you need to hire a professional resume writer. Don't waste your money finding one for less than 149 somewhere else, because that person doesn't have the experience I have, the qualifications I have to put your resume together. Thanks for listening. If you did listen to all this, most of you probably didn't. But that's my little sales pitch on this deal. And go find that article. You can fix your resume yourself, but a lot of guys just don't feel confident in putting their future in their own hands. So that's why we stay so busy this time of year. All right, Coach, thank you for listening. I'll see you next time on the Coach's Locker Podcast with Chris Fore.